New Las Vegas, and our speaking coach extraordinaire, Nina Tomaro.
Hello, and thank you all for having me here. And thank you to Kat for that awesome introduction. Made me sound pretty amazing. So I want to start with a story. I was around the age of 13 or 14, and I was in the basement of my house, and my dad walks down the stairs, and he has this look in his eyes. And before he could say anything, I knew exactly what he was going to tell me. I just wasn't ready for it at all. And my dad walked over and he gave me a hug. And he said, "Nina, Mama just passed away." And I lost my grandmother that night. And it was one of the hardest moments I've ever dealt with. And I carry her with me to this day. And I bring her up because she was probably the greatest mentor I've ever had in my life and ever will. And she's instilled me with 3 core values that I carry around with me. And I try to instill in others. The first of those is to be bold. To be bold and stand for what you believe in. My grandma moved here from Italy, and she did it by herself. And she had no communications back to our family in Italy, and she had no plan. She kind of just winged it. And it worked out pretty well because we're here now. And if she wasn't bold enough to take that step, I would probably have been born in Italy, and I wouldn't be standing here in front of you all right now. The second is to always be kind. Always be kind, no matter how cruel somebody is to you, because kindness will go so much further than that cruelty. And she was one of the kindest women that I knew. And the last is to serve others. Service is highly undervalued. And when you do an act of service, you don't even realize who it could be affecting. It's said that the person, the third-party person watching an act of kindness gains the most from that experience, and they're far more likely to go out and do the same thing. So, I took those values with me. Fast forward to 2011. I graduated college. I was a young, ambitious woman, and I was ready to conquer the world. And I realized that I couldn't do this in Cleveland. I probably could have, but I wanted to get out of my bubble and put myself out there. So I sat my parents down and I was like, I'm moving. And coming from an Italian family, they weren't particularly happy, but they were encouraging. And my dad's like, where are you moving? What are you gonna do with your life? And I said, Dad, I'm moving to Las Vegas. And my dad had this look in his eyes. And I knew exactly what he was thinking before he could say it. Oh my God, Nina, what are you thinking? Are you gonna be a stripper? Do you need to tell me something that I don't know? And boy, that was a great conversation for the next 2-3 hours. And I eventually told him the reasons why I wanted to move here. And he was okay with it because he knew that I had a really good head on my shoulders. So I got on a plane, August 2011, and I ventured my way out to Las Vegas. And I had no home. I lived in a hotel for 2 to 3 weeks. It was a very humbling experience. I had no job, and I had no plan on how to get a job. I pretty much just assumed because I graduated college that everybody would love me. And I had this amazing internship in college, so I had experience. So I go and I apply for a director position at Caesars Entertainment. And I am gonna conquer the world. Well, I didn't end up in that director position. I ended up actually actually in the pharmaceutical industry, funny enough. And no offense to the pharmaceutical industry, I actually learned a lot in my journey with that. But I went to work every single day, stressed out and terrified of whether I was gonna be allowed to speak that day and speak my mind. Because I had a boss that was little less than encouraging of females in the workforce. And I went to work every day and had to shut down my creative mind and pretty much turned into a zombie. And one day I just realized I couldn't live like that anymore. So I decided I was gonna be an entrepreneur. I had heard so much talk about this downtown project and this Tony Hsieh fellow that I wrote my college thesis paper on. And I'm like, you know what? He did it. He struggled, but look at where he is now. I am gonna start a marketing firm. And I did. And I started with an awesome group of people. And I was still working at my pharmaceutical job. I wasn't unrealistic at that time. I had to have an income. So my nights and weekends were filled with branding ideas and figuring out our clientele and figuring out how to get funding and all this the grand stuff that goes into a startup. And I realized that I had started my journey to my first failure as an entrepreneur. And I smile about it now. Because you're not an entrepreneur if you haven't had at least 2 or 3 failed startups. So, at least that's what I've heard. So, I learned a lot from that experience, but I was running low on cash. So I'm like, okay, I need to figure out what to do, but I can't continue going into work and hating my life. So, the next best thing, I became a contractor. That's pretty close to an entrepreneur. And I made a promise to myself that I would work with clients that had similar values to mine and that I could learn from. So I had a lot of speaking clients and I had a lot of marketing clients and I gained a vast knowledge of experience that I could never learn out of a book. And I would call those people mentors in my life. And I also heard of Downtown Project and me having this fascination with speaking and helping other people share their stories. I went downtown and I decided to interview all the upcoming entrepreneurs and see what they were doing and learn from them. And they became amazing mentors and some catalysts in my life. So I'm at this great place. But when you're a contractor, sometimes it's hard to pay the bills once you're done with that client. So I wanted to get something steady and I applied and applied and applied. And I was getting nothing because the word contractor, I learned really, really quickly means you're unemployed. And you possibly can't have a skill set. So I had a little bit of trouble, but I did manage to find an internship with a phenomenal guy in PR who actually had amazing clientele in the celebrity realm and the wrestling realm and UFC. And I was so excited to start this job. He was very impressed by my ambition and how outspoken I was and just how passionate I was to help people share their stories. So what better field than PR? So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna learn from him and then I'm gonna start my own PR firm and then I'm gonna be a millionaire. It's just gonna be that simple. That was my plan. His plan was a little bit different. I saw myself as learning a vast amount of knowledge from him and getting my big break. He saw me as arm candy and a woman to travel with him to make him look good. So this was now my second encounter in Vegas, dealing with men who can't embrace the value and the self-worth that we have as women. And at this point, I am extremely stressed out. I am pretty much running out of money, and I probably spent more time on the phone with my dad, bawling my eyes out than I ever had in my entire life. And it's just like my entire self-worth as a woman, all my dreams and hopes were just crumbling, and I didn't know what to do. So I was really still empowered by this downtown project, and I continued applying to different startups around the area, wasn't having much luck. I actually ended up going to this dinner party at the Ogden with my friend Sarah Gabriella, who's in the audience, and I happened to meet one of the best mentors that I've had in my life and one of my dear friends at this party. And we became friends, and she kind of learned my situation. And one day when I was just like, that's it, I'm going home, I'm giving up, done, we were at the hair salon. And we have a revelation. And it would happen at the hair salon. So, she told me that I had left option B and option C open, and I hadn't really decided that I want to be here in Vegas. And it resonated with me. It made me think about that, and I'm like, how do I expect the universe to conspire for me if I haven't even made that decision to remain in Vegas? I leave all these options open. No, I need to cut those off right now. So I cut them off. Fast forward to today. I now have several jobs. I work with Raster Media, and I'm their marketing ninja, because you have to have a cool title downtown. Otherwise, it's just not worth it. And then I also work with an amazing female tech entrepreneur, Lauren Thorpe, and she started a company called Oomba, and I just learned the daily grind that it takes to be a CEO, and it's so empowering to learn from a female who's made it. And both of these jobs actually encouraged me to continue my passion in speaking and coaching others to share their stories. So, I went through a pretty rough journey, but it turned out all right for me, and I learned a lot about mentorship through this whole process. The first thing I learned is that you don't have to have a mentor who's a CEO. You don't have to have a Tony Hsieh mentoring you to be successful. Although, if Tony Hsieh offered to mentor me, I probably wouldn't turn him down. But just saying, everybody in this room has a vast amount of knowledge and experiences that you can share with each other. Everybody in this room can be a mentor and mentee to one another. That's what WIMMI's about. The second thing that I learned is that mentorship itself, it has a little bit of an outdated connotation to it. Traditionally, we see it as somebody younger learning from somebody older in their field, and they have these coaching sessions, one-on-one calls, whatever, once a month, and it's very, very business-minded. Coming from the speaking realm and personally studying over 400 speakers, I have a vast amount of knowledge just from studying different speakers, from going on YouTube, from listening to audio CDs. I crank out the Anthony Robbins in my car and people think I'm crazy, but I'm just constantly inspired. And there's so many resources. We have amazing females here. We could create a mastermind group and have that as a mentorship tool to use. And the third thing that I learned is that a mentor can also be your friend. It doesn't have to just be about what can I get from you, what can you give me. Create friendship with them, because everybody that I've had as a mentor in my life is still a very close friend of mine. And I think it's highly undervalued to incorporate that element into mentorship, because it creates a much deeper investment between the two of you. So, I want to leave you with a quote from an author and a speaker that constantly inspires me on a daily basis. His name is Wayne Dyer, and he told me, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So change the way you look at the world, and life can be your mentorship. Change the way you look at the people that are surrounding you, that you encounter every single day. Every single person can be a mentor or guide in your life. Change the way you look at your circumstances, because every circumstance, from good to horribly, profoundly bad, can guide you in the right direction and lead you towards the path that you're supposed to be on.